The hour of 12:15 having arrived, we'll reconvene. We will come out of recess. We'll reconvene the tax committee. We have a quorum. So we are very fortunate today to have Mr. Chris Klayman that is going to go through the section of the bill that he works with. Then we're going to go to House Fiscal, Ms. Templin and Ms. Schill. And then right after that, we'll get into testimony. Then after that, we'll be taking a break for an hour. Then we'll work on the amendments. And so after Mr. Klayman and House Fiscal, we'll go to public testimony. And then we will, and again, the department will lead off with the public testimony. So with that being said, please state your name and who you represent for the record, please, sir.
Mr. Chair, I'm Chris Klayman from the House Research Department.
Welcome to the committee, sir.
And Mr. Chair, the A18 amendment that's in the packets today, that is the amendment that I'll be speaking to right now. This is essentially the division report that was heard a few days ago in the property tax division. And I guess rather than go through section by section, if it's okay with the chair, I could just speak to the changes that are in that bill from how it left the division as amended.
I think that would make some sense. Chair Marquardt, is that okay? We'll go through the differences. Okay, Mr. Klayman.
Yeah. Mr. Chair and members, so there are 6 changes from how this particular division report left the division to how it stands now in the A18 amendment. The first change is that there was an article in the division report as it left the committee relating to the exclusion of agricultural land from school debt levies. That was, I believe, Article 6, and that is no longer in the bill. That was a Marquardt amendment in the division report markup. Also, all of the undocumented alien and sanctuary city provisions are not in the A18 amendment that's before the committee today. There is a property tax refund provision, a Representative Loeffler amendment. That was removed due to its inclusion in the conformity provisions of the Omnibus Tax bill that I believe Mr. Williams spoke to this morning. That's substantively the same as the Loeffler amendment. So that is not in the A18 amendment. Under the property tax reform article in the Representative Whalen's classification consolidation bill, there was a change to the bed and breakfasts. In the previous version of the bill, the bed and breakfast could include up to 4 units in their homestead instead of 4 units in their homestead, and the A18 amendment increases that to 5 units. There is also a miscellaneous article in the division report that included an aid provision and other provisions relating to unmanned aircraft. Those have been incorporated into the organizational scheme of the Omnibus Tax bill. So the unmanned aircraft provisions are moved to the miscellaneous article, and the LGA provision is moved to the aids and credits article. And then there are just a couple LGA changes. The Lilydale one-time LGA $150,000 payment has been changed. Well, it moved to $150,000 instead of $25,000 a year for 6 years. And there's also an appropriation provided so that Lilydale and Hermantown aid is not taken from other cities. And Mr. Chair, members, those are the only changes from the division report as it left the property tax division as amended.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Hines, you're a resource?
As a resource. Yes.
You're a resource. Okay, thank you. Let's go out. Well, let's go to House Fiscal. Then I think we should have questions of House Research, Nonpartisan, and Fiscal, and members can call folks up as they wish. Please state your name and who you represent for the record, please.
Cynthia Templin, House Fiscal.
Welcome to the committee.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Kathy Schill, House Fiscal.
Welcome.
Mr. Chair and members, we will be working off a spreadsheet that is dated 4/23/18, and it has a 5:30 PM timestamp on it.
You were here at 5:30.
PM. PM.
Please continue.
Mr. Chair, the first page is just a summary page of the tax committee's target. As you can see in the kind of upper portion of the page, the committee target is $107,445,000. That's million for the tax committee in the current biennium, and that is in a reduction to the general fund of $107,445,000. And the rest of the page shows the general fund proposed changes. And I will review tax policy changes, and my colleague Kathy Schill will also go through the general fund property tax credit and aids expenditures. But going back to tax policy and to that line, the bill by the chair spends $104,890,000 in the fiscal 18-19 biennium. And in the 2021 biennium, the tax policy in House File 4385, the DE1 amendment with the amendments, also spends $33,705,000. There is a line in there for the stadium reserve that is just a reference for the committee. There is a revenue gain of $62.5 million from the changes in the state government committee in the tails that is being tracked in the tax committee spreadsheet.
The next line, Mr. Chair and members, shows the spending in the property tax aids, credits, and refunds section. There's a revenue reduction of $2.55 million in fiscal 18 and 19, and then in the 2021 biennium, there are revenue gains of $24.53 million. Total general fund impact, when you take those three lines together, equals the target in fiscal 18 and 19 of a savings of $107.445 million. And then in the tails, fiscal 20 and 21, there are revenue gains of $53.364 million.
And Mr. Chair, once again, the middle section of the summary page is just reference only for the stadium reserve and the proposed changes. And then moving down the page, there are non-general fund changes to 4 non-general fund accounts. And you can see the changes there. They're fairly small. They total $3.191 million in the current biennium for non-general fund accounts. Turning the page, the first page, or actually it's page 2 of your handout, starts with the tax policy changes, and these are changes to tax revenues. And just as a reminder, negatives, again, on this sheet mean they are tax reductions or they're a cost to the general fund. So at the top, you can see the total changes for tax revenues, and we just went over those, and I will go over quickly kind of the major changes in the spreadsheet to each tax type, but I won't go over line by line. Starting at the top of page 2, you can see for individual income tax, the total changes are $127,975,000 in general fund tax reductions in the fiscal 18-19 biennium. And for the tails for individual income tax, there's a total reduction of $57,855,000. The biggest changes in the income tax area, one of them is the individual income tax rate reduction to the second tier. House Research went over those changes earlier this morning. The rate, the second tier current law rate is 7.05, and it changes to 6.95 6.9% and 6.75%. The total cost of that proposal or provision in the bill is $106,300,000 in the current biennium. And in the tails, the cost is $336,100,000. Just above that, Mr. Chair, there's four lines for federal conformity. And these are the total changes as a result of federal conformity to the 4 acts. And I just want to also add to that, you can see that for example, for TCGA, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, the total changes to income taxes is positive $10.84 million. And for additional detail about what those changes are, I just want to bring to your attention that there is an appendix in this spreadsheet that starts on page 8 that will give you the details for income tax and for corporate tax of each provision for TCGA. For example, it will show you, the appendix will show you the cost of like the standard deduction and the cost of the exemptions and exclusions being allowed or disallowed as a result of federal conformity in the tax bill. Moving on to corporate taxes. At the middle of the page, the total changes for all the corporate tax provisions, there is a revenue gain of $31.6 million in the current biennium and $38.8 million in the tails. One of the biggest changes in corporate taxes is, again, because of TCGA, the federal conformity proposal, you can see at the middle of the page, there's $81.8 million in revenue gains because of conformity and $198 million in the tails because of conformity. Those revenue gains are offset by corporate tax reductions phased in. The total cost of the corporate tax reductions, I'm hoping you can follow along, is $24.3 million. That's a revenue reduction in the current biennium, and the cost of the corporate tax rate reductions in the tails is $129.7 million. I'm kind of jumping around, but I'm just trying to highlight the major points in the spreadsheet without going line by line. I hope that's working. Okay. Moving on.
See if you can't keep up, take notes.
Okay. Moving on to sales tax. In sales tax, there are a total of $8.1 million in reductions in the current biennium and $14.7 million in reductions in the tails. There are a number of new exemptions, starting at the top with there is a sales tax exemption for admissions for college preferred seating. That cost is $810,000 in the current biennium and $1.7 million in the tails. Just moving down the spreadsheet, again, a number of construction exemptions for various projects for fire stations and public safety facilities in various cities. And at the bottom of the spreadsheet, there is Representative David's, the provision, it is for the revenue neutral rate reduction for sales tax. That's for remote sellers. That is if there is a Supreme Court decision on Quill, that provision will have a zero revenue impact. Then we move on to estate tax, and there are just two provisions in the estate tax for total changes of $400,000 in reductions in the current biennium, and with no impact in the tails. The provision with the fiscal impact is the It's the modification of the business farm subtraction. There are definitional changes to the recapture tax. And again, that has a $400,000 impact. Finally, in other tax and non-tax revenue, the department's policy bill had a negligible impact starting in fiscal 19 and forward. That concludes the tax policy section.
Thank you, Ms. Temple. Ms. Schill?
Mr. Chair and members, on pages 4 through 7, you'll see the expenditure side of the spreadsheet for tax refunds, aids, and credits. Just a reminder that positive numbers are program expenditures, negative numbers are cost savings. This is not very different than the spreadsheet that we had for the division report, so I will point out certain lines where there are differences. Lines 1 through 5 reflect House File 3276, and as Mr. Clayman mentioned, that there was a slight modification to the B&B, the bed and breakfast provision in this file, and you can see that reflected on line 2 with PTR interactions at $1.5 million in fiscal 21. The overall cost of that bill is $6.63 million in fiscal 2021. Moving down the page, this is all pretty much what we saw in the division report. The next item of change you'll find on page 5, line 49, which is the change in the appropriation for LGA Lilydale. The one-time provision is $150,000 in fiscal 19. And immediately below it on line 50, you'll find the appropriation for Hermantown's aid adjustment at $97,000. We'll move to page 6, and I'm sorry for the confusion on the alignment of these pages. So just look at the bottom somewhere and see if you can find page 6. We'll continue on. There were changes on line 97 with respect to the due dates related to property tax modifications. And this has an impact on the date for senior deferral to November 1st. And then on page 7, line 146, there is a one-time transfer from the Service Aid and Recovery account from Department of Revenue of $3.4 million. That was in the division report. But below that is line 147, which is will be reflected in the amendment to come. It's an LGA prepayment for 2020. The payment is being made in fiscal 19 of $13.98 million. And line 169 gives you the overall impact of the changes presented in this bill, spending of $2.555 million in fiscal 18 and 19, and a cost savings of $24.53 million in fiscal 20 and 21.
Mr. Chair, then we turn to
Ms.
page
Kaplan.
8, and this spreadsheet again looks very different. This is an appendix. It is the federal conformity tracking. It shows the cost of each conformity to each act on that page with detail of the cost of each provision within each act for the current biennium and for the tails. I will not go through each line unless you need me to. So then that then after the appendix on page 17, there is just the non-general fund tracking of the provisions in the tax bill. And essentially, most of the provisions are impacts to the legacy fund because of all the sales tax changes. There's always a corresponding impact to the legacy fund. So there is a reduction of $465,000 to the legacy fund in the current biennium, and a reduction of $820,000 to the legacy fund in the tails. And then there are a few other funds that are affected by the provisions in the bill, and the impact is listed on that page. with that, that concludes the summary of the spreadsheet, unless there are questions.
Okay, I think we will go to questions from members for Ms. Templin, Ms. Schill, Mr. Michael, Mr. Williams, Clayman, and others, Ms. Dalton, Hines. If we have questions, we'll bring you forward. But Chair Marquardt.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. For Ms. Templin, on page 2, and it would be the rate reduction for income tax, second tier. So it's about the 5th line down on line 2. When that is fully phased in at the 6.75%, is that the number for fiscal year 2021, the 197? Is it fully phased in at that point, so we get an idea of what that cost would be?
Mr. Chair, Representative Marquardt, it is my understanding that if it's not fully phased in, it's close to being fully phased in by fiscal '21. But I can definitely get back to you and confirm that.
Thank you.
Chair Marquardt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And the same would be under the corporate franchise tax, the first line, modify the corporate tax rate. So when that would get to the 9.07, if we look at fiscal year 21 at the 89.9, would that also be fully phased in at that point?
Mr. Chair, Representative Marquardt, I believe it is also almost fully phased in by fiscal '21 as well, but I can confirm that as well.
Okay.
Chair Marquardt.
Very good, thank you. So the final year is probably the final phase in that?
Representative, yes.
Okay. Just, and I don't know, Mr. Chair, if there's answers to this or not, but some of the business conformity items, like the active loss limitation at 500,000 and 250, and the net operating loss modifications, and then the 30% interest limitations, into the long term, and I don't know, at least on the federal, on the Committee of Joint Taxation, a few of them continue to rise, but a couple of them actually kind of start bottoming out after about 10 years. And I know this is looking ahead, but just, and the governor's got this in his plan too. So I'm just wondering if, because I know that 500 to 250, the disallow the active pass-through, that starts out federally at 9.5 billion, but by 2027, it's down to 1.3. It kind of goes up and then comes down, at least, and then the limit, the net interest deduction, starts out at 8.4 and ultimately continues to rise, and at the end in 2027, that's at 36.9. But the net operating loss starts out at 6.4, goes up to about 34, and then goes back to 11.4 towards the end. So I'm worried a little bit about all of these as to the long-term impacts. And are some of these kind of one time and then they go off? I know the deemed repatriation is, but some of these other ones, a couple of them seem to kind of bottom out. And so I don't know if we know for sure, but it's something in the long run that down the road we may have to come and take a look at.
Ms. Templin.
Mr. Chair, just one comment to that. The House proposal does not include the FDII revenue gain or the gain from FDII or GILTI, the global intangible and the foreign derived income. And the House also, this proposal has a modified repatriation. It doesn't fully conform to the repatriation that is that, for example, the governor has conformed to. And the repatriation revenue is revenue over 8 years that is one time. The House, does a modified version of that. So, the revenue gain from that is much more limited. But as to your other questions, perhaps, offline we can talk and check, get more information about the questions you have specifically.
Very good. So
Chair Marquardt.
I had one question earlier for Mr. Michael.
Yes.
And it was just what Ms. Templin talked about. I was going to ask you, could you talk about the difference between the governor's treatment of the deemed repatriation in this bill? And I think I think that would be important because it brings in about a third of the revenue, so there's some differences there. So,
Mr. Michael?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Marquardt, and members of the committee, I glossed over this in the run-through, and so it probably is useful to explain in a little bit more detail what the difference is between the two. The deemed repatriation is the TCJA provision that said for corporations that have deferred foreign income, typically in foreign corporations, they're required to repatriate that income in tax year 2017, but they're going to be taxed on it at a low rate. And the rate, there are two different federal rates that will apply. If that income was just held in cash offshore, then it's going to be subject to a federal rate of 15.5%. And if it's actually invested in tangible property, so like in plant and equipment and that sort of thing, then it's taxed at an even lower rate of 8%. And that compares with a normal federal corporate rate for tax year 17. That's before the reduction to 21% of 35%. But mechanically, in order to get that income taxed at those lower rates, rather than simply have the federal government, rather than saying we're going to sort of have a separate form that applies different tax rates to that income, instead what we're going to do is we're going to have what's called a participation exemption that takes away some of that income or exempts it from taxation so that you can figure it out algebraically that it results in those 15.5 or 8% rates. What the governor's bill says, and this follows what we did back with the repatriation holiday back in 2004, when the federal government did a similar thing, the governor's bill says add that participation exemption or deduction back in computing Minnesota taxable income. What the House bill says is no, don't add that back, just leave it as it is. So that's the big difference, this 1/3 reduction that Representative Marquardt observed is because the House is not adding that back. So that has two effects. First, we're going to get way less revenue, which is what you were talking about. And secondly, it's going to tax that income differentially based on whether it was held as cash offshore or if it was invested in actual plant and productive equipment and so forth. So that's the explanation for the difference.
See, the governor's plan was algebraically, and the House, I didn't want to do that. Chair Marquardt.
thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Michael. So, in a way, the governor, if I'm getting this right, started at the 35% rate, which was the corporate rate, where the House bill would start at basically the 15% rate, and then do our calculations from there. Is that, am I on the right?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Marquardt, yes, sort of. Basically,
That's at least a C plus. I think I got there. That, I will take that. So.
the governor is going to start with the total amount of all of that deferred foreign income. And then our dividend received deduction will apply to exempt 80% of that income. The House bill starts with the lower amount that yielded those lower rates and then also applies the dividend received deduction.
Okay.
Chair Marquardt.
Thank you very much. I just have one more question. I think I know the answer, but it's not spelled out specifically in the legislation. One of the things we talked about early on is that if you elected to take the standard deduction on the federal form, you had to do that also on the state form. And I know the governor separated that, and I think this bill does too, but just want to verify that election consistency or whatever that term is
Mr.
done
Williams.
here.
Mr. Chair, Representative Marquardt, that's correct. It's that requirement for consistent elections is not included in this bill.
Chair Marquardt.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Questions from members? Representative Loeffler?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. And one of the things that I've just been kind of wrestling with and trying to understand is the big picture budget situation in that on the deemed repatriation revenue, my understanding is that the corporation has a chance to phase it in, or decision to phase it in over 8 years, and that we don't do anything in this bill to incent them to do it early or late. We're just going to have to deal with it. How does that influence, what is the assumption in this in terms of what the rate of receipts will be? And, you know, is there a budget risk to that? And I'm not sure if that's what our fiscal analyst should answer or Mr. Michael, but I just want to get a better sense of what the assumptions are behind the numbers here.
Mr. Michael?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Loeffler, what the federal government requires as you indicated, there could be 3 different things that could happen here. One is that the corporation could just voluntarily decide, hey, we know that this repatriation tax is going to apply, so we're going to voluntarily repatriate income without regard to the provision. And if that's the case, then all of the income will show up in 2017, and there's no effect whatsoever with that. And there's a lot of evidence from the media that there's a lot of that going on, and the Joint Committee's estimate assumes that. The second thing is that the federal government says when you file your 2017 return, you can elect to pay it in 8 installments. And what the House bill and the governor's bill, they're both the same on this, do is that says if you make that federal election, then you're bound by the federal election for Minnesota purposes too. And basically what that federal election says is you will pay it in installments. The first 5 years you'll pay 8% of it, and then it goes up to 15, 20, and then 25 to get you to the 100%. And so it's sort of backloaded. But what both bills do is say that if you do that election for federal purposes, then you're doing that for state purposes. So that's the second thing that could happen. The third thing that could happen is you could just decide not to elect and just pay it all on the deemed. I don't think that that's going to happen. I think people either have decided, corporations, the managers of the corporations have decided whether they're going to voluntarily repatriate and then the income all shows up, or there'd be absolutely no reason for them not to pay it in installments because of the time value of money. It just would not make sense to prepay.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. And when will we have information on what they've actually chosen to do, since it's a corporate choice?
Mr. Michael?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Loeffler, when they start to file their 2017, their tax year 2017 returns, which usually they, those were actually due already, but they always get long extensions. And so I'm guessing that the first information on this will come out in the fall of this year. And there'll probably be better indications about it early next year as to what's going on at the state level.
And thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one more question. And then what is the budget risk to the state based on the assumptions that we're basing this budget on? It sounds like we're using the same assumptions as the governor, but, if more of them chose to spread it out over the 8-year payment schedule, does that put us at greater risk of having a difficulty in balancing out our revenues and expenditures?
Mr. Michael, or maybe Ms. Templin, or Mr. Michael?
Chairman, Representative Loeffler, that's hard to know how to assess what that probability is. The one thing I will say is that we're in the same boat as the federal government because our estimates are just an allocation of what the federal estimates are. And so the uncertainty, there are 2 uncertainties. One is that how revenue allocates that may not turn out to be the right percentage based on, what Minnesota percentage is. There's a second uncertainty as to the constitutionality of the ability of states to tax this income that is also lurking out there that creates a separate sort of a bigger sort of budget risk that's unrelated to, gee, did you just misestimate how much of this income there will be? And I think there's a fairly big band of uncertainty around the federal estimates. I'm less concerned about the uncertainty about revenue's decision about how much to apportion to Minnesota, because they've been fairly good at doing that in the past, and I'm guessing that those relationships haven't changed that much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That was my questions.
Thank you. Other questions for members for House Fiscal or Nonpartisan Research? Okay, thank you very much. And I'm going to be putting an amendment in, and I just gave the big lecture this morning about how we can't have amendments that haven't been heard. But what my amendment is going to say is none of our nonpartisan staff or partisan staff on either side or fiscal may retire at any time. And I think I'll get unanimous support for that. Okay, item next, we are going to the list. And we are very fortunate today to have Commissioner Bowerly with us and Mr. Cummings. And you will start off, and then after, we're not putting a time limit on the commissioner, by the way. Everybody else we do, including Mr. Cummings. Just kidding. Okay, so we have Commissioner Bowerly, Mr. Cummings. Please provide your testimony on the tax bill, House File 4385, as it will be amended.
Good afternoon, members, and Mr. Chair, thank you for the opportunity to testify. For the record, my name is Cynthia Bowerly, and I'm the Commissioner of the Minnesota Department of Revenue.
Welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, we want to thank you for the areas in which this bill and the governor's bill seem to agree. Generally, starting with adjusted gross income for individuals and keeping federal taxable income for corporations, fully conforming to the 179 expensing provision, the treatment of bonus depreciation with the 80% add back, the angel tax credit extension for 1 year, conforming to many of the domestic income provisions for the business side of the federal tax bill. The senior property tax deferral, Mr. Chairman, we're happy to see that that application date is adjusted in the bill. However, we believe we can provide this relief to seniors sooner for taxes payable in 2019 for applications in 2018, as we do in the governor's bill. And the bill includes many provisions from the department's policy and technical bills, including moving to more inclusive language for our tax code, updating certifications, and providing clear guidance to taxpayers. So we appreciate the commonality that we see in many parts of this bill, Mr. Chairman. Unfortunately, this bill, like the tax bill at the federal level passed last year, provides more for businesses than for working Minnesota families in terms of rate cuts. Although it changes income rates for both individuals and corporations, for individuals, the bill provides a 0.3% rate cut, and for the second tier, and a 0.7% rate cut for corporations. That's double that which individuals will see. And for businesses, this bill will cut tax rates costing over $60 million per year when fully phased in, repealing the corporate AMT and Section 179, as does the governor's bill. All of this is on top of the 40% rate cut corporations already received in their federal taxes. The bill provides 100% subtraction for global intangible low tax income for individuals and corporations, and also decouples 100% from the foreign-derived intangible income deductions for both individuals and corporations. The inclusion of this global intangible low tax income at the federal level was designed to curb the erosion of the U.S. tax base by multinational corporations. For C corporations, the global intangible low tax income provision operates as a minimum tax that is intended to make sure U.S. corporations and their foreign subsidiaries pay some corporate tax. So this bill shields multinational corporations with foreign subsidiaries rather than focusing on Minnesota families. And although, as Mr. Michael just recently explained, the bill does bring to Minnesota some of its share of deemed repatriation income, it first allows the federal preferred rate reduction and then the Minnesota dividend received deduction. The governor's approach, which follows established Minnesota policy, allows the dividend received deduction, but not the federal preferred reduction. Allowing corporations to claim both of these preferential treatments for this income reduces the revenue apportioned to Minnesota even further. I'd like to turn next to what's in the bill for Minnesota families. For those with income less than $37,851 for married or $25,800 for a single individual, they will see no rate reduction at all. The rate cut for the second tier will help wealthier families more than middle-income families. When fully phased in for married joint filers, those earning $40,000 will see a $6 tax cut. Those earning $80,000 per year will receive a $126 tax cut, and those earning $270,000 per year will receive a $338 tax cut. That means that the wealthiest Minnesotans would receive tax cuts that are both larger in amount and as a percentage of their income than low and middle-class Minnesotans across the state. Minnesotans earning the median income of $65,000 would receive an $82 tax cut, which is $254 less than the cut for those earning $150,000. That $82 tax cut is less than 0.2% of income for that median income family. In addition, Mr. Chairman, approximately 900,000 Minnesotans claim itemized deductions each year to save on their taxes. This bill, as the federal law did, reduces or removes some of those deductions. For many working Minnesotans, the increase to the standard deduction of $1,000 will not make up for the loss of itemized deductions, as it will translate to approximately $65 for a family. We will address deductions in more detail in a few minutes. I would also like to note there are a number of items in the governor's bill that are not included in this bill that help low and middle income families, including the expansion of the working family credit and a new child and dependent credit. The working family credit proposal will expand the credit for the first time to single adults who are 21 years old and will allow families with 3 or more children access to a larger credit at a higher income range. And the governor proposed a new non-refundable per person tax credit for individuals earning less than $140,000 and for married filers earning less than $280,000 per year. And that $60 per person would mean a $240 cut in actual tax for a family of 4. The bill also does not include items from the governor's bill, including 6 common sense provisions to make our business taxes more fair, limits to the type of software that qualifies for the data center exemption, and tobacco tax changes that improve public health and cut down on tax evasion. I would also note, Mr. Chair, that this bill increases the amount of provider tax paid by Minnesotans by expanding the tax to massage services. This is a deviation from the governor's bill that will not increase the provider tax $1 from what is being paid by Minnesotans now. I will now turn it over to Mr. Cummings to review additional portions of the bill.
Mr. Cummings.
For the record, my name is Paul Cummings, and I'm the Tax Policy Manager at the Minnesota Department of Revenue. Thank you for the opportunity to testify at this committee.
Welcome to the committee, sir.
Thank you. There are several tax benefits that provide tax relief to nearly 900,000 Minnesotans, which the governor worked hard to protect in his proposal. These cost-saving deductions were reduced or repealed by President Trump and congressional Republicans at the federal level, and unlike the governor's bill, many are removed from the state tax code in this bill. For example, the governor's proposal would protect a deduction for employees who have expenses related to their job which are not reimbursed by their employer, expenses for the production of income, and expenses related to tax preparation fees. These help to cut the costs for Minnesotans to just perform their job, such as mileage between work sites, meals and housing, safety equipment, and work clothes. This tax deduction can save Minnesotans hundreds or even thousands of dollars that many workers depend on as critical elements of their annual incomes. Under prior law, they could be deducted if they exceed 2% of their income. About 111,000 Minnesotans benefit from the employee expenses deduction, saving an average of $419 annually. And this is just one portion of the miscellaneous deductions that were disallowed. Under the House Plan, Minnesotans will have to pay taxes on those expenses and many others, meaning that many Minnesotans will lose important tax breaks and pay more in taxes. Mr. Chair, as you noted, that number could be about 220,000 in your public remarks. And we can see why. The bill eliminates cost-saving tax deductions for tax prep expenses, business bad debt of an employee, business liability insurance premiums, damages paid to a former employer for breach of an employment contract, depreciation on a computer a taxpayer's employer requires him to use in his work, dues to a chamber of commerce if membership helps the taxpayer perform his job, dues for professional societies, Home office or part of a taxpayer's home used regularly and exclusively in the taxpayer's work. Job search expenses in the taxpayer's present occupation. Laboratory breakage fees. Legal fees related to the taxpayer's job. Licenses and regulatory fees. Malpractice insurance premiums. Medical examinations required by an employer. Occupational taxes. Passport fees for a business trip. Repayment of an income aid payment received under an employer's plan. Research expenses of a college professor. Rural mail carrier's vehicle expenses. Subscriptions to professional journals and trade magazines related to taxpayers' work. Tools and supplies used in taxpayers' work. Purchase of travel, transportation, meals, and local lodging related to the taxpayer's work. Union dues and expenses. Work clothes and uniforms if required and not suitable for everyday use. Work-related education. Repayments to Social Security benefits. The share of the deductible investment expenses from pass-through entities. Appraisal fees for a casualty loss or charitable contribution. Casualty and theft losses from property used in performing services as an employee. Clerical help and office rent and caring for investments. Depreciation on home computers used for investments. Excess deductions allowing a beneficiary on termination of an estate or trust. Fees to collect interest and dividends. Hobby expenses, but not generally more than the hobby income. Indirect miscellaneous deductions from pass-through entities. Investment fees and expenses. Loss on deposit of an insolvent or bankrupt financial institution. Loss on traditional IRAs or Roth IRAs when the amounts have been distributed. Repayments of income. Safe deposit box rental fees. Service charges on dividend reinvestment plans and trustees' fees for an IRA if separately billed and paid. Educator expenses in excess of 2% of income. And the list goes on, Mr. Chair. Many people move to or within Minnesota each year, and significant expenses come with such a big transition. The governor's proposal would protect the moving expenses deduction to make a less significant expense for Minnesotans. About 61,000 Minnesotans benefit from this deduction with an average savings of $150. The House disallows this tax benefit. There are other deductions that do not affect most Minnesotans, but make a big difference for families that do use them. One of the most essential examples of this is a casualty loss deduction. A family that suffers a major loss, like a house fire, will still be able to deduct those losses under the governor's proposal. About 800 Minnesotans use the casualty loss deduction each year, but is a very significant expense for them, with an average $16,000 benefit. The House plan will allow this deduction in the event of a federally declared disaster only. The bill limits the property tax deduction for the amount of tax paid over $30,000 a year. In addition, it limits the mortgage interest deduction, disallows the bicycle commuting expense exclusion, and the home equity loan deduction. While this bill removes important tax benefits from working Minnesotans, it does find room to extend tax benefits for gold, silver, platinum, palladium, and other precious metals. Indexing is also modified in this bill. The House approach moves the indexing of brackets and various tax attributes to chain CPI, except for the property tax refund. This will mean that brackets will increase more slowly, increasing taxes on individuals. In addition, because the other credits will increase more slowly, their tax credits and other benefits will be less beneficial over time, also raising their taxes. These changes may seem technical, but they will have real impacts on Minnesotans by raising their taxes over time compared to what they would have paid under current law. Before I turn it back to Commissioner Bowerly, I wanted to talk about portions of the bill as amended that deal with property taxes. The bill asks the Department of Revenue to provide a notice to taxpayers on the loss of benefits found in this bill. To put the burden on the Department of Revenue to develop and implement a plan to notify all property owners in the state of Minnesota is really outside of our normal capacity. To have county administrators share their property owner information with the state is a duplication of efforts, not necessary. The bill raids a DOR service and recovery fund. This impacts our ability to increase staffing or support funding for local governments helping administer the local option sales tax. Last year, the number of local option sales taxes increased dramatically as a result of the changes in the 2017 Omnibus Tax bill. This past year alone, we added 17 local option sales taxes as a result of those changes, including one water and sewer district. The number of local option sales taxes are increasing, and local governments are expecting quicker turnaround times in activating those taxes. Given that, it does not make sense for the legislature to send the opposite message to the Department of Revenue by making them less able to accommodate local governments by removing this fund, while at the same time delivering nearly $4 million annual cut to the agency in its state government finance bill. I know that a couple weeks ago, the department provided a sales tax calculator that we hope was helpful, and also is helping people assist in how they're dealing with many of these local option sales tax. In addition, Mr. Chair, there was an amendment added in the division report without public testimony that would shift property taxes on school levies. In short, for future school building bond levies, this proposal will eliminate the property tax on ag land, lower the property tax paid by cabins and businesses, and then provide additional state debt equalization aid. Under the new rules, the share of taxes paid by farmers, businesses, and cabins.
Mr. Cummings, that's not in the bill.
Mr. Chair, while I understand that it was added as an amendment in the property tax division report, and it could be added again, and so
No,
if there's an
it won't
amendment.
be.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Well, Mr. Chair, there was concerns, and so we did want to make sure that we put our concerns on the record if there was an opportunity not to provide that testimony in the future.
Duly noted.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This bill repeals the political contribution refund, which has been a hallmark of Minnesota's campaign finance system for some time. The PCR provides an important for more people to participate in our campaign finance system and encourages small dollar contributions. We are concerned about the elimination of this program. This time, I'll turn it back over to Commissioner Bowerly, who will describe other impacts to local units of government from this bill.
Thank you, Mr. Cummings. Didn't mean to interrupt you there, but you were kind of going on something that doesn't exist and will not exist. Commissioner Bowerly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Excuse me. Turning to a couple more provisions on the property tax division portion of the bill, we do have some concerns about treatments of local governments in the bill. The repeal to Minneapolis Library Aid is concerning. This is a commitment the state has made, and we should keep that commitment. Mr. Chair, we appreciate that the bill removed a provision from the division report that would have reduced local government aid based on decisions made by local governments on how they want to serve their residents, including immigrants. However, a couple provisions remain that prohibit locally elected officials from making decisions on behalf of their constituents, including any government unit from using any appropriation to even study the feasibility of a rail project between Rochester and the metro area, and a provision regarding fees on food containers. The bill also includes requiring elections on city, county, and local and school district referendum questions related to property taxes, debt, and spending be limited to one day per year, as well as proposing reverse referendum policies. These proposals limit the flexibility of locally elected officials to meet the needs of their constituents. These proposals were rejected last year, and we continue to have concerns about them. We are also concerned about micromanaging local Hennepin County sales tax from St. Paul. If the legislature would like to fund a special project in Hennepin County, it has every opportunity to do so, rather than tying a county's hands on the use of its own funds. I would also note that this is an example of the many projects that demonstrate the need for a long-term solution for sustainable transportation financing that does not compete with other general fund needs. Finally, Mr. Chairman, we are concerned that this bill does not reflect the fiscal sustainability that Minnesota needs. The governor's commitment to long-term fiscal responsibility is the reason he's proposed removing 3 items from last year's tax bill: the state general levy inflator repeal, the cigarette inflator repeal, and the estate tax freeze at $2.4 million. One concern is, Mr. Chairman, the bill does not show the full cost of the provisions in the current biennium. Instead, it phases in rate changes for individuals and corporations over time, not showing their true costs until the last year of the 2021 biennium. If tax provisions are important enough to be included in the bill, the full cost should be shown in the first year so that Minnesotans can understand who is benefited and by how much. This kind of transparency is what Minnesotans deserve throughout this process. We also note that the bill prepays about $14 million in local government aid. We anticipate that this is a needed shift to make the second biennium of the bill balance. In addition, the bill would reduce the sales tax rate based on a federal Supreme Court decision that has not been issued and likely will not be issued until June. Starting 15 months after the state begins collecting sales tax on marketplace providers or other remote sellers, the Commissioner of Revenue is instructed to reduce the general sales tax and legacy sales tax rates by a revenue-neutral amount. This bill anticipates what the Supreme Court may or may not do in the Wayfair decision. We have no idea, and based on the reports of last week's hearing in front of the Supreme Court, it seems even more uncertain that whether the Supreme Court will decide to overturn Quill, uphold Quill, and leave it to Congress, or create another path. Legislation attempting to anticipate what the Supreme Court might do creates a high level of fiscal uncertainty. What we can tell you is that we are closely monitoring the Wayfair versus South Dakota case in the Supreme Court, and once a decision is made, we will provide information to Minnesota taxpayers about how that decision will be administered. And of course, we'll communicate with the legislature so that you have actual information upon which to make decisions about appropriate sales tax rates. Next, the bill takes money from the stadium reserve account based upon forecasted amounts rather than actual receipts. We should not deplete that fund until we know the actual revenue flowing into that account, and only at that point should we make changes. Finally, Mr. Chairman, as we know more about the long-term costs of the bill, they must be balanced against revenue sources in the bill. For example, as has already been noted, the deemed repatriation revenue will end after 8 years, but it seems to be built into the revenue stream to fund permanent rate changes. And several provisions, such as the historic tax credit, which isn't a loss of the credit, is just changes the years in which it's recognized, shifts that revenue between years. The governor has been very clear about his commitment to fiscal sustainability for the state of Minnesota. As he expressed in a letter to leaders on April 9th, the long-term fiscal stability of the state is his highest priority. He has worked over the past 7 years to restore the state's fiscal stability, and he will not support any bill that threatens that stability. Mr. Chair, we are still reviewing the bill and the division amendment, and we will share additional information as the bill moves forward. The department will also like to work with you, as we traditionally do, and committee staff to ensure that technical and administrative issues can be addressed. We look forward to working with you, Mr. Chairman, and the entire committee as this bill moves forward. There are significant areas of agreement. However, we have a great deal more to do if we are to put low-income and working families first in this tax bill. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And thank you very much. So, Commissioner, other than what you and Mr. Cummings just talked about, you're okay with the rest of it?
Mr. Chairman, I think we need to reserve additional time to continue reviewing the bill. We did study the bill as soon as it came out over the weekend, but I think we need a little bit more time.
You know, I was so excited because normally when my tax bills come out, I just get ripped to shreds. In Sunday's paper, when they asked the governor's office about it, they said they're reviewing it. I said, really? They're actually looking at it. I was so excited. So with that being said, members, we are 12 minutes into Ways and Means, and so to testifiers and those that will testify, if you see members of the Ways and Means Committee moving in and out, it's nothing personal, it's nothing you said, it's just that there are several votes in Ways and Means also, so we're going to try and coordinate some of that best we can. Well, thank you very much for your testimony. We'll go to questions. First of all, one thing you did bring up, I've got a question for Mr. Williams. What's the count for number of people with an increase? Because I think it's coming down some. Mr. Williams?
Mr. Chair and committee members, we've been working on sort of modeling your proposal. I think before we sort of talk about specific numbers, it's helpful to remember that the income tax model that we have that can sort of estimate how different changes in the tax code affect different people only works sort of on the individual income tax side. So any modeling we can do would not take into account changes on business and pass-through entities. Mr. Michael has done some sort of research into this, and we think that there's about $230 million in revenue raisers on the pass-through sides and about $120 million in revenue decreases on the pass-through side that we're just not accounting for on model. So I think that that's sort of helpful context when you're thinking about the modeling. I think that the 220,000 number that was cited here was based on a model run we did for you earlier for your proposal before the larger rate increase that will be adopted in the author's amendment today. So I think that the most recent number, including that larger rate increase, was 178,000. Yes. Rate cut, Mr. Chair. So after the larger rate cut, there's about 179,000 people getting tax increases on the model. I also note, without getting too far into the weeds, the way that the Department of Revenue is estimating a provision, or this home equity loan provision, probably overstates a little bit the number of people that are getting tax increases. So that might be, there's probably a fewer than that, than the 178 that actually get tax increases under your proposal, but it's hard to know for sure.
Okay. Thank you. Chair Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and that was helpful to hear Mr. Williams. Commissioner, I keep going back to the analysis that your department put together, and looking at the governor's proposal in comparison to what Chair Davids has put together here today. And what concerns me most about the governor's proposal is that we're really putting a $635 million tax increase on the poorest of the poor. And when you look through the charts that we have comparing the sick tax and what that means, it actually is a higher tax increase on the poorest of the poor than it is on those that are the higher income bracket. And by your own report, it cites that. It says that this entire sick tax is quite regressive. That's the words of the analysis, not mine. And as Minnesota tax policymakers, we look at regressivity quite a bit. And I get concerned when we're talking about really hitting those that can at least afford it. Not only that, if you're just looking at the governor's tax bill overall, he's adding a tax burden of $92 million just on his portion of the tax bill. So combined between those two, we're looking at a tax increase for Minnesotans of over $700 million at a time when we have a $329 million budget surplus. So I think we're headed in the wrong direction with that. I'm very concerned about what this means for Minnesotans, especially when we talk about the conversation that we have on affordability of health care. And we now are going to make health care more expensive by keeping the sick tax, which was part of a deal way back in 2011. And I don't think that that's the right approach, and hurting those that can least afford it. And I just like to share that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Questions for?
Mr. Chairman, may I?
Certainly, Commissioner Bowerly.
Chair Davids and Chair Anderson, I think what's really important when we think about the provider tax is that it is current law. And so when you compare current law to the governor's proposal, it is an extension of the provider tax. So no one will be paying a single dollar more than they are today. And the importance of healthcare costs, I think, is a very common concern of Minnesotans. And I appreciate your concern for our lowest income Minnesotans who struggle most with some of those costs. It's one of the reasons the governor is proposing to expand the working family credit and proposes this new dependent and personal credit. The provider tax funds Minnesota Care and other important health services across the state of Minnesota. And if we don't have a plan for continuing Minnesota Care, healthcare costs for everyone will go up because those people will lose coverage and they will wind up in emergency rooms and their costs will go up. So I think that it's important to keep in mind the impacts of not extending the provider tax on healthcare costs. Those are essential services upon which our neighbors rely. This is a health plan for people who are working but may not have employer-provided coverage. And it is an extension of an existing tax, and so no one will be paying additional tax as a result of the governor's bill.
Commissioner Bowerly, what's the current law for 2020 regarding the sick tax?
Mr. Chairman, the provider tax, I believe, expires in the end of, January 1st of 2021? 2020.
2020?
2020, it ends in 2019.
2019. So that's current law. Chair Anderson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner, by your own tax incidence analysis, it doesn't describe it as that people are not going to see a tax increase. The exact words of the Department of Revenue's description of this is that it's a provider tax increase, which is quite regressive. They don't describe it as an extension. They don't describe it as people aren't going to be paying more. They say this is a tax increase. And we are going to do this tax increase on those that can least afford it.
Representative Grunhagen.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, just one follow-up on your comparison of the governor's tax versus the tax, Chair Davids's tax bill. Did you use in your analysis for the middle and low-income people the figures from increasing the provider tax on them by extending it? Or did you just use, since it's already a tax, did you exclude that from your analysis of how much tax they would be paying?
Commissioner Bowerly.
Chair Davids and Representative Grunhagen, I think when we were describing this proposal, it does not include the provider tax change, and so it was not included. The just numbers that we were providing for this bill are isolated to this bill. Does that answer your question?
Representative Gruenhagen?
Yeah, I believe so, but I think people need to realize that the extending the provider tax was not figured into the figures that you were sharing between the governor's tax bill and Chair Davids's tax bill. Which would actually, I tend to agree with Representative Anderson, it is a tax increase because we're extending it. And it hits the low and middle income people the worst.
Commissioner Bowerly?
Mr. Chair and Representative Gruenhagen, what we have been doing all along in committee last week when describing the governor's proposal and this week in describing the chair's proposal is to compare what's happening under current law to the changes that are reflected in the bill.
Representative Gruenhagen? Representative Schultz?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, you know, if we're only going to look at tax incidence, and that's a mistake, you also have to look at the benefits that paying taxes provides to people in Minnesota. The very low income individuals likely qualify for public health programs, and so they're not paying the provider tax entirely, or they're only paying a small percentage of it. So we have to look at what benefits we can provide with the tax revenue we collect. And if you are so opposed to the provider tax or provider fee, you are welcome to introduce a bill to repeal it, because I believe it's being retained in Chair David's tax bill, the House tax bill. But if you are so opposed to it and think it's a tax increase, where's the bill to repeal it?
Chair Drazkowski, and then I'd like to go, unless there's other member questions, I'd like to go to get into our testimony here. Chair Drazkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Commissioner. So I'm interested in this discussion as well. So, Commissioner, in fiscal year 2022, how much will under current law, how much will the provider tax collect?
Commissioner Bowerly?
Mr. Chair and Chair Drazkowski, I don't think you need me to answer that question. You know it is not zero.
Chair Drazkowski?
Mr. Chair, it sounds like zero is current law, and the governor's proposal is a tax increase. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman and Chair Drazkowski, I think that for Minnesotans, this is a very academic debate. They know what they're paying in taxes now, and they know what services they receive from the state of Minnesota. And what I think our charge is in response to this federal bill and in a tax bill this year is to help Minnesotans who have yet to see some of the benefits of the recovery of a recession. Wages have not kept pace with respect to corporate profits. Minnesota families are not seeing the benefits of the federal tax bill. Those are going to shareholders in forms of dividends. And I think what Minnesotans are looking for is how does this change their lives, their individual lives from today going forward? And what we know is that the provider tax funds essential health services for hundreds of thousands of Minnesotans. And if we want to look to the future, what I think we need to answer for those Minnesotans is how are we going to help them afford health care where they can get primary care and get preventive care instead of just winding up in emergency rooms when they're very sick.
Chair Drazkowski?
No, I think the Commissioner made my point for me.
Mr. Chair.
Okay, Mr. Cummings.
If it's helpful, I could go through the list of lost deductions under the House bill. If that's helpful, I can do that again if that's...
That's not helpful.
Okay. Maybe another time.
That's not helpful at all. Okay, so here we are. I got the last question. So we want to have class warfare and talk about corporations and how they do better than everybody else. I really don't want to do that, but that's what we've done today, and that's fine. I get the process. I understand. What happens if, because the partisan divide becomes so wide, we can't come to agreements on things, and so there's no bill passed? Probably the second greatest bill ever written is before us, but it doesn't go anywhere. How does the department function, and what happens? Commissioner Bowerly.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I think you might be referring to the first greatest bill ever written, which would be the governor's bill.
No, that was 2017 bill. The governor signed so willingly.
So if we are unable to do anything, Minnesotans will face a more complicated filing system, and 300,000 Minnesotans will face additional tax.
How many?
300,000 Minnesotans will face additional tax.
I thought it was more than that. Okay, that's not a good scenario. So we can do this. We can do this. Let's get this done. Okay, we need some good testimony. We've had very good testimony. We need some more good testimony. And again, members, Ways and Means is going, so before we start voting on things, Chair Marquardt, we will make sure that folks in Ways and Means that are on taxes know that we're going to be voting on something, but that's not for a while. And thank you so much, Commissioner Barley. Thank you very much, Mr. Cummings. And if you could see me after the tax committee meeting, I would like to go through that list again of things. Okay. So let's go to, we have an exciting lineup here today. Let's go to Mr. Paul Egger, and we're going to go 2 minutes a shot, and you folks are professionals. You will get your points in within that 2 minutes. I'm very confident. If not, we can certainly talk as the process moves on. We're going to go Mr. Egger, Taylor with Minnesota Council of Nonprofits, Nan Madden, Andrea, Kipe. I don't want to mess names up here. Andrea. So, Mr. Egger, please give us your comments, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Paul Egger. I'm Vice President of Governmental Affairs for the Minnesota Realtors Association.
Who's the president?
Our CEO is Chris Galler.
Cool. Okay. I always thought you were the president. Okay. No. That didn't count for your time. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity to share our thoughts with the committee regarding several provisions in the chair's proposal affecting homeowners and homeownership. We very much appreciate that the chair's proposal addresses the issue caused by provisions in the federal tax bill, which increased the household income amount used to calculate property tax refunds. The PTR is a very important program, Mr. Chair, that provides tax relief directly to homeowners whose property taxes are high relative to their incomes. And I'd also like to thank Representative Loeffler, Chair Drazkowski, and members of this committee and the division for their work on this issue, as well as the governor for including this provision in his bill. Although, Mr. Chair, that we would prefer not to match the federal tax bill's reductions for several itemized deductions, particularly those for homeownership, we definitely appreciate that the chair's proposal includes the state and local property tax deduction and at a higher amount than was in the federal tax bill. The chair's proposal also includes deductions for mortgage debt forgiveness and mortgage insurance premiums, which are two key provisions for homeowners in the federal tax extenders legislation enacted by Congress regularly since 2007. These two items were extended in the Federal Bipartisan Budget Act of 2018, which was enacted on February 9th, 2018. We appreciate that these two provisions are included in the chair's bill. However, we also encourage the legislature to make these provisions permanent deductions in Minnesota's tax code rather than continuing to extend them year to year. And this was the subject of a bill that Representative Anderson carried last year. With that, Mr. Chair, thank you for the opportunity to testify.
No, thank you, Mr. Egger. Taylor, Minnesota Council of Nonprofits, Nan Madden, Andrea, Mike Hickey. Welcome to the committee, sir. Please state your name and who you represent for the record, please.
Thank you. For the record, my name is Taylor Putz with the Minnesota Council of Nonprofits, representing 2,000 of the state's nonprofit organizations. House File 4385 ensures that there is a continued culture of community giving for Minnesotans who itemize through the charitable donation deduction. We are pleased that taxpayers who will no longer be able to itemize at the federal level would be able to continue itemizing their charitable gifts at the state level. We are disappointed that the charitable deduction used by those who do not itemize was not strengthened in this bill. While the deduction is maintained at its current level, we believe there is a missed opportunity to encourage more giving by all Minnesotans. At the end of the day, all taxpayers deserve recognition for their meaningful contributions, whether large or small. As a final bill comes together, we urge you to include a provision that would expand the charitable deduction for non-itemizers by lowering the $500 threshold or increasing the 50% limit. I know you have a lot on your plate, Mr. Chair, but there are several levers that can be pulled that could strengthen the deduction and could make a significant impact. We look forward to working with you to ensure the nonprofit sector can continue to be an important partner in delivering essential services and contributing to job growth across the state. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to testify.
Thank you, Mr. Putz. Let's go to Ms. Madden, Andrea, and then Mr. Hickey. Ms. Madden, welcome to the Tax Committee. Please state your name and who you represent for the record, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Nan Madden. I'm director of the Minnesota Budget Project and appreciate the opportunity to share some initial thoughts on this bill. First, I would like to thank you that the bill protects everyday Minnesotans from seeing tax increases as a result of the federal bill's elimination of the personal and dependent exemption. Instead, this bill maintains the value of those exemptions and has a slightly higher standard deduction. We appreciate those provisions, which protect families with dependents, and for maintaining the value of the property tax refunds received by seniors, people with disabilities, and families with children. I do have some concerns with this bill. I'm concerned that the bill over time erodes the value of the working family credit and the child and dependent care credit by switching to a slower growing measure of inflation, which weakens these tax credits that are so important for Minnesotans working to gain traction in the workforce and get their children off to a strong start. Second concern is that the tax reductions in this bill from the rate reduction leave out many, many Minnesota working families who just don't happen to have enough income to get into the second bracket, and the tax cuts get bigger for those with higher incomes. As you work towards final tax legislation this year, I urge you to consider other mechanisms, including working family credit expansion, so that working Minnesotans are included in tax cuts enacted this year. I'd also mention that the department's testimony raised a number of issues related to changes in itemized deductions that merit further consideration and understanding of their impacts. And the final concern is that the bill's income tax and corporate tax rate reductions phase in over 3 years, committing the state to additional future tax cuts without knowing what economic and budget circumstances we will be facing in 2020. Given that recent federal budget plans have proposed deep cuts in funding to the states. And
Thank you, Ms. Madden. Thank you very much, and we'll talk more. You're certainly welcome to.
Okay, thank you,
stop by
Mr. Chair.
anytime. Okay, let's go to Andrea. Can you please pronounce your last name?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Andrea Keepy. I'm the Community Relations and Outreach Manager for Prepare and Prosper.
Welcome to the committee.
I appreciate the opportunity to testify today on House File 4385. We appreciate the House tax proposal's language shielding Minnesota families with dependents from seeing tax increases due to conformity. It also prevents seniors, people with disabilities, and Minnesota families from seeing reductions to their property tax refunds. We commend the House Tax Committee for supporting these vitally important measures. However, we are disappointed that the Omnibus bill does not include an expansion of the Minnesota Working Family Credit. This credit builds on the documented successes of such credits in supporting work, reducing poverty, and improving the health and education of children. The Working Family Credit enhances the ability of hardworking Minnesotans and their families across the state to meet basic needs, save for unexpected emergencies, and plan for the future. Every year during tax season, our volunteers and staff hear from countless customers that the Minnesota Working Family Credit has made a critical difference in their day-to-day lives. As this bill moves forward, we urge you to include an expansion of the Working Families Credit. Thank you so much for your consideration today.
No, thank you very much, and thanks for the work that your organization does. Mr. Hickey, Ms. Kadoon, Ms. Larson, Mr. Conry. Mr. Hickey, welcome to the committee, sir.
Mr. Chairman, Mike Hickey, the National Federation of Independent Business for the state's major small business group. Great to see you all again. This is about the 7th or 8th time I've testified, so certainly keep it in with the 2-minute limit here, but want to thank you and appreciate some of the big provisions in this bill to help small business. Most importantly, in our judgment, is the Section 179 conformity. This is huge, and it's great to see some bipartisan agreement here, and appreciate the fact that Governor Dayton supports this also, but we're hugely out of conformity on Section 179, and if we can make it all the way to full conformity without the very annoying add back, which this proposal has, it'd be a terrific accomplishment and really help small businesses and farmers that are equipment intensive and need to buy expensive equipment and replace expensive equipment from time to time. We also appreciate the change or clarification on the estate tax and the 3-year holding period. We're hearing from people who do estate work that the way we're administering the law now, somebody could own a business most of their adult life or be a co-owner as a spouse and not live 3 years beyond the passing of their spouse and miss the whole ability to do that exemption. So this is an important change we need to make. Mr. Chairman, I don't know whenever we're going to conform to the estate tax, but I think we really need to tighten up and make the small business carve-out and the farm carve-out work better. And you've got provisions in this bill to do that, and we appreciate that. We support the rate cut on the second individual income tax rate. A lot of small business owners are very much middle-class people, and they'll benefit from that. And finally, we do support all the corporate provisions. There's about 35,000 corporate payers in Minnesota, and most of them are small business or medium-sized businesses, so the rate cut and the repeal of the AMT are going to be helpful to them. So appreciate all the positive things here.
Perfect, 2 minutes, that's awesome. And you said nice things, too. That's good. Okay, Ms. Kadoun, Larson, Conry, Dukic. So let's go, thank you, Mr. Hickey. Let's go to Ms. Kadoun.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, my name is Beth Kadoun. I represent the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce. I'm here to testify in support of the bill. We're supportive of the pro-growth tax reforms contained in this bill that will make progress on improving Minnesota's competitiveness by addressing Minnesota's tax rates, both for individuals, which is many of our pass-through companies, and our private sector job creators. We thank the chair for enacting what we see as very good tax and economic policy, which if you're broadening the base, which you are with these federal tax conformity provisions, that you're also then addressing by lowering the rates, and also addressing provisions to help ease administrative burdens and enact more simplification for our tax system. Specifically, we're in support of the Section 179 provisions that Mike Hickey spoke about. We're also supportive of the individual income tax rate reductions, impacting, like I said, many pass-through businesses as well. We believe this is a great start to address our tax rates. We do believe we do have to address our other rates as well. Really have to get at in the future, as future budgets allow, that 9.85% rate, which is 4th highest in the nation, and the 7.85% rate, which is 8th highest in the nation. We're very supportive of the corporate rate reduction that will move Minnesota from 3rd highest in the nation of 9.8% to 5th highest in the nation, so good progress on that as well. Ultimately, we believe we need to get out of the top 10 on all those tax rates. Supportive of the corporate AMT repeal as well. One thing I do want to mention is, let's be clear, this is not a corporate tax giveaway. Ultimately, as fiscal staff has said, this will be a net tax increase on businesses. I do believe the tax chair has done a good job of mitigating a lot of those tax increases, but when you look at the fiscal sheet, it is a tax increase. And so I want to make sure that it's not portrayed as something is not, which is a corporate tax giveaway, because that's not true. We'll ultimately be paying more in taxes under this.
Sorry.
Chair, I know you did the best you can, so I do appreciate and do think we were making great progress in this area.
And we also need to go to Ms. Larson. I'll thank you, Ms.
Okay, thank you.
Kadoun. From the Chamber, Ms. Larson, Conry, Dukic, Chris Sherman, Sherman Associates. Ms. Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members. My name is Jill Larson. I'm with the Minnesota Business Partnership. The partnership's position on federal tax conformity has been and still is that Minnesota should use conformity as an opportunity to make tax changes that result in a more competitive tax climate and that position Minnesota for increased economic growth. We believe that this proposal moves the state in that direction and will help improve the state's economic competitiveness. We support the reduction in the individual income tax rate. This is a step in the right direction to help address the challenge that Minnesota employers have in recruiting and retaining talent in Minnesota. We also appreciate that this proposal, by reducing the Minnesota corporate income tax rate, will largely, though not completely, offset the tax increase on Minnesota businesses that would otherwise result from conforming with the federal tax provisions. The rate reduction will help improve our competitiveness by moving us away from having one of the highest rates in the country. It will also reduce one of Minnesota's most regressive taxes, helping both employers and all Minnesotans. We also support the repeal of the corporate AMT. Regarding the bill's treatment of taxing income earned by Minnesota companies outside the U.S., we do appreciate that the proposal on the deemed repatriated income more closely aligns with the federal treatment than the governor's bill does, and therefore somewhat mitigates the negative impact on Minnesota employers. However, we do continue to have competitive and constitutional concerns with Minnesota departing from its longstanding policy of generally not taxing income earned outside the U.S. Most states will not be taxing this income, and this will make Minnesota more of an outlier. Finally, Mr. Chairman, we appreciate what's not in this bill: the governor's data center sales tax limitation, the business property tax inflator reinstatement, and the economic substance provisions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Larson. Mr. Conry, Mr. Dukic, Chris Sherman.
Chair Davids.
Who you represent for the record, please, sir.
Yes, Chair Davids, members of the committee, my name is Chris Conry. I'm here representing Take Action Minnesota. Thank you for the Thank you for the opportunity to testify. I'm here today to express our applause for and concerns about House File 4385. First, we're glad to see that Chair Davids is proposing a partial adoption of the deemed patriation provisions of the TCJA. However, we believe this is a missed opportunity. Full conformity to deemed repatriation is overdue, and conformity to the GILTI provisions is needed given the federal shift to the worldwide system. As currently written, the bill commits the state to new permanent corporate rate reductions and the repeal of the corporate AMT at a cost that will grow over time without offsetting it by the new revenue brought in by the federal tax bill. We believe that this revenue should be adopted and that this one-time money should be used to make a one-time investment in a public good that Minnesotans need. In particular, we're concerned because the rate reduction is not targeted to help Minnesota businesses. Minnesota uses a single sales factor apportionment system to calculate its corporate franchise tax. Any business that has nexus sales and taxable income in Minnesota should pay it. While a rate reduction may lower rates in Mankato, it also lowers rates in Manhattan and Seattle and Cupertino. Finally, we share concerns about some of the policy provisions in the property tax report, in particular, the preemption on taxes and fees related to food containers and food, and also the reverse referendum on utility franchise fees. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. John Dukich, Chris Sherman, Aaron Hannafin-Berg. No hyphen there. Should be a hyphen. Okay, Mr. Dukich.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, for the record, my name is John Dukich with the Minnesota High Tech Association, and I will keep my comments brief today. First, Mr. Chair, I'd like to thank you for including $10 million in funding for the Angel Investment Tax Credit. The credit has helped leverage $421 million in private investment in Minnesota startups since it was first enacted in 2010. We were disappointed to see the credit expire at the end of 2017, but are thankful to see this renewed funding in tax year 2019. And secondly, Mr. Chair and committee members, you've heard that there have been proposals to scale back Minnesota's data center tax incentive. This proposal would hurt many of our members and Minnesota's broader technology community. And so we'd like to thank you for not including or for not making any changes to Minnesota's data center tax incentive. With that, Mr. Chair, that concludes my testimony. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dukich. Chris Sherman, Aaron, Patricia Nauman, Keith Carlson. Chris Sherman.
Actually, Chair Davids, my name is Erin Hannafin-Berg, and I'm going to go a little out of order, if that's all right.
Well, I demand order. Who's Chris Sherman?
I am Chris Sherman, and I'm going to let Aaron go in front of me if that's okay.
Sorry to mess with your system.
Duly noted.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Chair David.
Okay, Ms. Berg.
Yes, Chair Davids and members of the committee, my name is Erin Hannafin-Berg, and I'm with the Preservation Alliance of Minnesota. The Preservation Alliance is a nonprofit organization with a mission to connect people to historic places, promoting community vitality. I am joined by our board member, Chris Sherman, and we are here to express our concern about the effects of conforming to the federal changes in the historic tax credit. When Minnesota enacted a historic credit in 2010, we joined 30 other states in adopting this incentive, which allows an income tax credit equal to 20% of the qualified rehabilitation expenses for an income-producing property that's listed in the National Register of Historic Places. Several of you authored or co-authored the bill in 2013 that extended the initial sunset date, and we thank you for that, making this possible. Mr. Chair, we especially appreciate your strong support for the historic tax credit over the years. I hope that you've been as pleased as we have been to see the impacts of this credit in terms of jobs, in terms of generated economic activity, and in reclaimed and reused historic buildings all across the state. Over 100 historic tax credit projects have been undertaken since 2011, resulting in $2.2 billion of economic activity. Typically, more than $9 is generated for every dollar allowed in tax credits. In fiscal year 2017, 7 historic rehab projects were approved, totaling $6.7 million in state income tax credit allocations. The problem is that the federal credit, which must be claimed against tax liability, now is required to be taken ratably over a 5-year period, beginning with the year that the completed project is placed in service.
Most historic tax credit projects are incredibly complex, both in terms of the physical work that must be done to get a deteriorated building usable again, and also in terms of the project financing. Developers partner with investors who buy the tax credits and contribute the capital that is needed to undertake the construction work. I'll allow Mr. Sherman to explain the effects of the changes at the federal level so that he can explain how those have impacted the historic tax credits.
Okay. Mr. Sherman, please state your name and who you represent for the record, please.
Mr. Chair and members of the committee, I'm Chris Sherman with Sherman Associates, also board member of Preservation Alliance of Minnesota and board member of Multifamily Housing Association. Our organization, Sherman Associates, has been using the state historic tax credit since 2010. Our first development using that tool is Riverside Plaza, which is 1,303 units of affordable housing, K-8 charter school, a variety of uses. The state historic and federal historic credits were catalysts for making that project a reality for us and preserving that critical affordable housing resource for the next 40+ years. Up in Duluth, we recently completed the North Shore Theater development, which used both the state and federal historic tax credits. That project required a variety of other sources from the state, city, county, every source out there. Without the state historic tax credit and the federal historic tax credit, that project would not have been a reality. What we've seen with the state historic tax credit has been an extreme catalyst in so many of the neighborhoods across the state. You look at Lowertown St. Paul and the impact it's had there. You look over in the Cedar Riverside neighborhood, it's not only creating economic impact within the buildings that are historic, it's also creating economic impact in the buildings around it with new construction and infilling these voids that exist, whether it be in the downtown cores or up in Duluth. It's having a massive impact beyond just the direct numbers, and the direct numbers are significant. You look at the program since 2010, it's been $2.2 billion worth of development occurring with the state historic tax credit. Massive numbers, and we want to continue to utilize this tool in very effective ways to make some of these amazing high-impact projects a reality. It's providing construction jobs, long-term permanent jobs, whether it be affordable housing management. It's providing affordable housing homes. In the theaters that we just opened the North Shore Theater 6 weeks ago, we now have dozens of artists that are performing at the theater on a weekly basis. The Duluth Playhouse is there, the Duluth Ballet. The credit is really an efficient tool. It's one of the most efficient tools out there. We want to maintain its efficiency, and we think it's very critical.
Thank you, Mr. Sherman.
Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Patricia Nauman, Keith Carlson, Sasha Bergman.
Thank you.
Ms. Nauman. And thank you for your testimony, even though you were out of order. Ms. Nauman, Carlson, Bergman.
Mr. Chair, I hate to disappoint you, but Ms. Nauman can't be here, and she asked me to testify with the same points the League of Cities has. Can I go?
That is a disappointment. Mr. Carlson, please state your name and who you represent for the record, please.
Mr. Chair, members, my name is Gary Carlson. I'm with the League of Minnesota Cities. I'm also testifying today on behalf of the Metro Cities Organization. Ms. Nauman had to leave for another meeting.
Welcome to the committee, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. 4 quick points. Article 6, Section 3 of the division amendment includes language that would prohibit cities from imposing new excise taxes and fees. We appreciate Representative Nash working with us to carve out the license fee issue, but we still think that that change is unnecessary in the bill. Article 7, generally the referendum article, we worked with Representative Driscowski on that article. We don't think it's necessary, but he was gracious in carving out emergency and disaster types of events from the November referendum requirement. We do appreciate that. And then finally, we'd like to respectfully oppose 2 pieces in Article 7 of the division amendment. The franchise fees subjected to reverse referendums, we feel that that would take away flexibility of local officials. And then Article 7, Section 7, the lease purchase reverse referendum provisions, we also feel that that would hinder the ability of cities to undertake development projects. So with that, Mr. Chair, I would stand for questions.
You know what the first lease purchase project was in the state of Minnesota?
Mr. Chair, I'd have to suspect it was with the city of Preston.
It was. Do you know what it was for?
Mr. Chair, I do not know.
It was the fire hall. That's who did the fire hall. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Carlson, Bergman, Nolan. Please state your name, who you represent for the record, please, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Keith Carlson, Minnesota Intercounty Association. I want to start out by thanking the chair for retaining important elements of the state's property tax relief system by retaining an itemized deduction for property taxes up to a $30,000 cap, as well as the exemptions for the elderly, the disabled, and the dependents within the property tax refund. and also eliminating the current law's requirement that elections for state purposes, such as claiming, or for federal purposes, such as claiming the standard deduction, do not apply for state purposes, so individuals can continue to itemize on the state while claiming the standard at the federal. We do support Representative Whalen's provisions in Article 5, simplifying the residential classification system, but continue to have concerns about the additional complications that are added every year to the agricultural classifications that makes it what's already difficult to administer further complicated. We support Representative Erickson's provisions in Article 6, Section 5, getting both state and local relief to properties affected by the walleye ban on Lake Mille Lacs. We, as well as the cities, are concerned about the provision in Article 7, Section 7, requiring a reverse referendum on lease purchase agreements, as well as the uniform date for bond referendums. This will be particularly disadvantageous to small counties that have relatively limited board-authorized levy authority for jails or their capital improvement programs. Even when these rehabilitations or rebuilding of those facilities are either required by state law or to maintain adequate facilities for the state's courts. Finally, I want to indicate that we oppose the provision that diverts a portion of Hennepin County's local option sales tax. This is a really unfortunate precedent.
Thank you, Mr. Carlson. Let's go to Ms. Bergman, Nolan, and Bruner. Let's go to Ms. Bergman, City of Minneapolis. Please state your name and who you represent for the record, please.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the House Tax Committee. My name is Sasha Bergman, and I'm representing the City of Minneapolis.
Welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to start by thanking you and members of the committee for including the tax decrement financing provisions from House File 3300, authored by Representative Fu Lee, for the Upper Harbor Terminal in North Minneapolis, which is on page 110 of the A180834 amendment. The Upper Harbor Terminal is a 48-acre city-owned site that has been a barge shipping terminal for decades until the federal government closed the Upper St. Anthony Falls Lock in 2018 to prevent the migration of invasive fish up the Mississippi River. This closure has rendered the site functionally obsolete with respect to its original purpose and presents an exciting redevelopment opportunity for the city. The provisions for the Upper Harbor Terminal are a critical tool to make some of the necessary public improvements for the site for whatever redevelopment will follow. I also wanted to note for the chair, or for the record, Mr. Chair, that we do respectfully oppose the repealer contained in the Property Tax Division Amendment on page 84, Section 6, related to our library debt service aid. This provision has been a partnership between the state and the city to complete debt service payments on the Hennepin County Central Library in downtown Minneapolis. Mr. Chair, I want to thank you for the time today, and with that, I'll conclude my testimony.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bergman. Mr. Nolan, Bruner, and then Jan Callison. Okay, please state your name and who you represent for the record, please, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Fred Nolan, representing Minnesota Rural Education Association, 224 school districts across greater Minnesota. We're not talking about income tax conformity. That's above our pay grade. We're talking about elections in Article 7. And in Article 7, we'd ask that two things be stricken. One, in Section 2, it says cumulative of what the board expects to certify should be on the ballot. Boards call for elections if they're going to call for a referendum election. Then they do a preliminary certification. Then they hold the election. Then they do a final certification. In the final certification, boards can always under-levy, and that may be due to what happens in the election. So you're creating a new step in the process with the word expect that may or may not work out to be accurate at all. And so we would ask that that be stricken from the language. Also, Section 3, Paragraph C, a year ago, there was a long discussion about many groups to come to 5 uniform election dates. We're working under those. It spreads out the bond costs and bond issues. Task forces and school districts come to conclusions at different times, and it was a well-thought-through discussion. We ask that you continue that language that was worked out last year and not add new language this year to have bonds on one date. This has been testified in Property Tax Division and in elections committees over the last couple of years by all education organizations. Thank you, Madam. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Knoll. Mr. Bruner, Jan Callison, Kevin Brown. Mr. Bruner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mark Bruner, Manufactured Modular Home Association of Minnesota. The association represents the builders of manufactured modular homes as well as the state's 900-plus manufactured home communities, which are home to about 50,000 manufactured homeowners. I'd like to address a provision in Section 22 of the A18 amendment that was adopted earlier that would repeal what's called a Class 1 manufactured home park rate. That was a provision that you carried last session that'll take effect in 2019. Essentially, the effect of repealing that provision is that for manufactured home parks that qualify as a Class 1 for anything above $500,000 in value, they'll see a 25% increase or 25% rate increase in their property taxes. The reason for that reduction and the bill last session was to address the state shortage of affordable workforce housing, and that effort was to encourage our members and manufactured home parks to expand the properties where they could, as well as to upgrade infrastructure and other amenities to try to preserve the longevity of the state's largest source of non-subsidized affordable housing. So we'd encourage the committee to reevaluate that provision. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bruner. Jan Callison, Chair, County Board of Commissioners. What county is that? Oh, Hennepin. Okay. Welcome to the committee. Please state your name and who you represent for the record, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, my name is Jan Callison. I'm the chair of the Hennepin County Board of Commissioners, and I appreciate the chance to speak.
Welcome to the committee.
My comments are directed to the provision which diverts sales tax revenue authorized by us to Plymouth and Maple Grove. Much of what you may have heard in support of this bill is incorrect or incomplete. The bridge on 494 River County Road 9, Rockford Road, the bridge that Plymouth cannot get us to fix, is not our bridge. It is your bridge. We are responsible for the road that runs over it, but not the bridge itself. Data that may have been shared with you about the amount of money that we have spent in Plymouth and Maple Grove is at best incomplete. We're in the process of analyzing our records, but our analysis to date shows that over the past 20 years, we have spent more than $35.9 million in Plymouth and $51.1 million in Maple Grove. Our system of decision-making about road projects focuses on needs and not wants. We have instituted a process that is open, accountable, and collaborative. I am sure Plymouth and Maple Grove are correct when they assert that they pay more into Hennepin County than they receive. I am also sure that this is true about the relationship with the state of Minnesota and the United States. However, much of the sales tax that they claim as theirs is undoubtedly the result of folks traveling to Plymouth and Maple Grove from neighboring cities over county roads or state highways for jobs and shopping. And so I leave for you the basic tax question that this legislation poses. Is the Plymouth Maple Grove assertion that what's ours is ours now the organizing principle for transportation funding in the state of Minnesota? If it is, then I trust that the state will apply it consistently to Hennepin County and return some of the $84 million in funding that it collects annually from Hennepin County and redistributes elsewhere, not to mention $15 million collected through the leased motor vehicle sales tax, from which Hennepin County is excluded. We'll be able to meet more than the road needs of Plymouth and Maple Grove once this new principle is fairly applied. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members.
Thank you, Mr. Kevin Brown, and then Robert Patrick VI.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Kevin Brown, and I represent my company SmartSet Incorporated, a 32-year-old graphic design and print business in Northeast Minneapolis. I want to thank you for the opportunity to testify specifically regarding the proposed reduction in corporate tax rates to 9.64 and ultimately 9.07 by 2021. It's not very often that small business owners can take time off from their busy schedules to testify at the Capitol, but through my membership in the Main Street Alliance, I've been able to meet and talk about a variety of issues with small business owners from throughout the state, and I'm honored to share a few of those concerns with you today. As I'm sure you're all well aware, small businesses, those who do not file as C Corps, represent over 90% of all businesses in Minnesota. Since we are all pass-through businesses, a reduction in a corporate tax rate does not benefit us in any way. I don't lie awake at night worrying about government taxes and how they affect my business. I do lie awake at night and worry about what's going to happen to my health insurance costs next year and how I will deal with the continuing financial pressure in providing health care to my family and my employees. The proposed decrease in corporate tax rates has been portrayed as a pro-growth measure. While this may help the largest 10% of all companies in Minnesota, it goes further in widening the playing field between large and small companies. Small businesses need and support state investments in our communities, whether that means support for childcare, reforming the healthcare system, or spending on infrastructure. If we really want to pass a pro-growth measure, how about increasing tax relief for childcare expenses? How many women and men would be able to rejoin the workforce or work more hours if they had access to affordable childcare? And where would that increased family income go? Would we not see increased growth in taxes paid and spending on goods and services?
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Thank you.
Mr. Patrick, please state your name and who you represent for the record, please, sir.
Mr. Chair and members, I'm Bobby Patrick, and I am the Director of Government Relations for Medical Alley Association. We appreciate the opportunity to share our thoughts on this legislation. We want to thank you for your work on this bill and highlight two of the provisions of special importance to the health technology industry. First is the additional $10 million for the Angel Investment Tax Credit. The health technology industry is a key part of Minnesota's economy. We need to ensure that today's innovators have the resources they need to keep investing in R&D so they can power job growth and economic growth for the next generation of Minnesotans. The Angel Investment Tax Credit is one way we can do that. Minnesota is increasingly competing against other states as a place for startup companies to locate. For example, Massachusetts, one of Minnesota's top competitors for digital health companies, instituted an Angel Investment Tax Credit for the first time in 2017. Illinois brought theirs back at the end of 2017, and Wisconsin strengthened theirs just a few weeks ago. Keeping Minnesota's Angel Investment Tax Credit funded is important to making sure Minnesota is a destination for health technology startups. We also want to join the chorus in thanking you for including full conformity to Section 179 expensing. This is beneficial to increasing investment in Minnesota by health technology companies. Permanently increasing the expensing limit allowed under Minnesota law and removing the 5-year add-back requirement will provide increased incentive for those companies to invest in large equipment purchases in Minnesota. Conforming to this incentive provides another reason to invest in Minnesota and will keep this industry growing here instead of other potential locations. Thank you again for the opportunity to share our thoughts on this bill.
Thank you very much, Mr. Patrick. Okay, with that, Mr. Marquardt, about maybe 3 o'clock, is that okay? About an hour?
Mr. Chair, that'd be fine. We could do it in 45 minutes too. So whatever is the wish of the committee.
Tell you what, let's go, we'll reconvene, we'll recess, reconvene at 3 o'clock. GOP members, if you could please join me in my office about 2:45, just to visit a little bit. 2:45, 3 o'clock, then full committee. And what we have to do yet is to mark the bill up. Chair Marquardt.
Yeah, well, Mr. Chair, I'd like to announce DFL members will meet in room 272.
Wonderful.
Immediately.
Okay, so DFL members in 272 immediately. GOP, my office at 2:45. And so with that, members, we are in recess until 3 p.m.